Okay, I don't know why. Yeah, it's finally working. So on the previous page, we were discussing his efforts towards, shall we say, uh, consolidating this new a visionary learning space that he had all along wanted to bring into being, Vishwabharati. And at the bottom of the earlier page, I'll project it. Um, Sorry about being just a little uh, so I think I started off with the wrong page. So right. So you can see the after Brikhoropon, the mention of Brikhoropon. So I'm talking about how parallelly, not just disciplines and constituent departments and bhavans were coming into being within Vishwabharati. So we are not just concerned about, you see, Vishwabharati is not a building, it's not just the foundation stone. It was meant for Tagore to be, or to operate, to be functional, to be a functioning learning space. And I keep using the word learning space as opposed to university, because university has, as a notion, as a phenomenon, has certain institutional dimensions that Tagore initially would probably not have wanted, because all his life he had been trying to run away from institutions. And so it's more of a hybrid learning center or learning space that he had in mind. I've already said that there were three functions, as it were. One would have been teaching children from very early on, from the very formative years, introducing them to holistic, shall we say, creative unity, a holistic education. That's one principle. Principle two, higher research at the other end, in humanities subjects, and if you like, higher research. So the emphasis is on two things: higher research, and with special reference to humanities subjects, the liberal arts, also the sciences, but not not so much technology in the minutest sense of the term. So technical education was again geared towards, shall we say, the immediate needs of the community and the surrounding places. So, so that was what he would have had in mind. And the third, of course, the third principle, or the third vision, was to make Shantiniketan or Vishwabharati a center for world unity, cultural unity, a center of confluence, cultural confluence. In that context, therefore, the center of Indian culture, that article is of paramount importance. I wanted, therefore, to draw your attention to it. Please underline it, because this has implications for how you look at his work towards Vishwabharati. Have you got my point so far?
Yes,
Yes,
Didi.
they.
Okay. Let me now again start presenting, now that it's a little less complicated. So, parallelly, he was again on world tours. He was getting in. He has, if you have been to, if you have ever been to the Bichitra Museum here at Shantiniketan as part of the Uttarayan complex, or if you do come over, make it a point to go there, uh, just to have a look, among other things, the extraordinary number of citations that he received from different countries around the world. So just to get an idea of the gifts that he received, the number of countries far-flung countries that he happened to visit on so many occasions, right through these 20s and 30s, before he became too old to travel. I think his final visits would be to Iran in 1930 or so. These were years of frantic travel, and everywhere he went, he would lecture, and people would look to him for uh, shall we say, political wisdom, and and also creative wisdom, and shall we say philosophical truths about the directions human life might take. So the different places he visited several times are catalogued here. I guess a part of his motivation for these visits was, of course, also finding funding for Vishwabharati. So he didn't go to you see, lecture tours are today quite common. Lecture tours for writers had, just as we have artistic residencies or writer or poet residencies today at institutions around the world, would have been quite common even for English writers, for instance, in the 19th century. Say Charles Dickens, whom everyone has heard about, went to America several times. He needed money. So doubtless Tagore needed money too. But my point is that he undertook these tours also because he needed money for Vishwabharati. So he saw these lectures as not just dissemination of his particular, and by extension Indian wisdom, Indian knowledge, Indian ideals, but also parallelly an opportunity to raise funds in terms of the remunerations he received from different for the different lectures that he delivered. Have you got my point?
Yes, Didi.
Yes, Didi.
Right. So
Yes, ma'am.
note that. Thank you. So note that this was the occasion for his third American journey, visits to Germany, Switzerland, Denmark. Now I don't know. I'm 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 keeping on admitting students. So this is all very, very factual. How he was given, how he was lionized, and so on. But the important essay or collection of addresses and thoughts from this. But so we have had talk about sadhana, we have had personality. Religion of man is going to come later, but here we have creative unity, another collection. So please underline it, because it has also got profound implications for how we think about or talk about Tagore as a composite artist, as somebody who moved easily from. He would take up painting, as you know, in a major way from the late 1920s, 27 or so onwards. And he would have a major exhibition in Paris in 1930. A lot of this, Tagorean creative unity is a principle that helped him combine his writing with his paintings, with his song compositions, with his art as dramatist, art as a director. He was not just a dramatist; he would also be the director of his own plays. He would be he would be a patron of. He was a patron of new art. He was a patron of shall we say, stage design, and in his personal capacity as somebody who liked to move from one house to another, all of which kind of remain in place at Uttarayan. You can see that he had very, very interesting ideas on architecture as well. So there are so many facets to Tagorean art, and therefore this particular collection called Creative Unity, shall we say, is very important if you want to understand how art really has no boundaries. I guess this is something that you will all encounter in some capacity or other. It's so easy, particularly in this digital age. We see this more than ever. The fact that it's possible to combine so many different art forms on the digital platform. You can think of cinema itself as just such a composite art form where you can, so the motion picture with audio, with dialogue, with acting, with stage design, with artistic direction, all of that kind of comes together in the idea of the cinema. And the storytelling, everything is there. And there can be other such art forms. Think of your installation art, people who are from the art disciplines here in the class. So, installation, which might actually be showing something on television and using objects, and might actually combine dance all in one go. Have you all heard about Maria Abramovich? Yeah, look her up. Look her up because she does just that. Anybody here knows about her?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I'll just put in a link there for you to explore. Just a moment. So this is just not for arts people from the arts. This is for everyone who might be interested in different forms of language. We are talking here of creative unity of different languages. Have you noted the website that I shared? Everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
So to
Didi.
get, yeah, thank you. So to get back to the text again, parallelly, what's happening? This is a major kind of milestone in terms of what I've already been discussing. Tagore's shall we say, interactions with Gandhi and the beginnings of personal friendship between them, associateship, if you like, because Tagore was kind enough to give shelter to the students, the boy students from Phoenix School, South Africa, a school that had been started by Tagore, by Gandhi, and they were all fleeing South Africa because of kind of repressive measures put in place, and they had nowhere to go to. And so Tagore very kindly put them up at his ashram. And this is a gesture that Gandhi would never forget. So they had a lot of differences, you see, in terms of the details of political strategization of Shotagraho, or notions about Swadeshi movement, and a lot of other things. And I've shared my general essay with you there, non-technical essay yesterday, where you, if you're interested, you might get an inkling of how they were constantly both in agreement in general on general principles, but also very they didn't fight shy of disagreeing with one another. So it's a very, very interesting friendship that they had across the entire span of Tagore's life when he died in 1941. And Gandhi would have a major contribution in terms of getting funds pumped into Vishwabharati. And without Gandhi's intervention, uh, Vishwabharati would not have probably become an institution of national importance. So, because you see, Gandhi's protege Nehru would actually take responsibility for this institution and all that. So the friendship with Nehru, Nehru's looking to Tagore as a kind of mentor. Nehru came to Tagore many times when it came to deciding on the national anthem, a national song, and other such cultural matters of national importance. And then he would send his daughter Indira Gandhi, former Prime Minister of India, to study at Vishwabharati. So you see, the Tagore was no less than the Renaissance humanists of Europe that I'd been talking about in an earlier class. They used to be advisors to statesmen and kings and monarchs. Tagore was no less in terms of being constantly in touch with the architects of independent India. And all that stems from that lifelong friendship and association with Gandhi. So this is all going to begin here. This is an important death, 10th of March, which sadly we could not we are, I don't know if we are going to be able to. Yeah, we did in at our department, we did commemorate it last year. It had not yet been locked, India had not gone into lockdown yet. So Gandhi Punnaho, please underline the date, is the day on which we do something like a ceremonial spring cleaning. And the principle is not just spring cleaning in terms of getting rid of all the detritus of winter. It's very symbolic and welcoming spring, but also about ensuring that everyone from students to faculty members to people to persons who so kindly assist us in our departmental and university administration. So not just the teaching faculty, but also the administrative faculty. Everyone across the board can come together and work together. This is the idea of ashram. I was struck one day by, in course of a lecture, when a very, very distinguished Sanskrit and Pali scholar who lives in Shantiniketan explained to us one day what ashram, as part of that lecture, what ashram means. Do you have any idea what ashram means?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, what is it? Literally,
Ashram means a
etymologically. Yeah, yeah.
ashram literally means a
A
place where
sacred ground, I think.
Yes, sacred ground. Yes, the first speaker. What were you going to say?
it's a place where students, not just students, but in general, um, what should we call? Pil- it's kind of a place like a pilgrimage where people can come and I'm sorry,
No,
out of terms.
all of that is
Yes,
true.
ma'am.
It's true. Also, the second speaker, you are also right in a certain manner of speaking. Tagore himself, as you're going to read in a later in an essay in the second term, got his idea from Tapovan, Tapobon, which would be been the abode of meditation and secluded learning. By some of the very ancient Indian, shall we say, uh, rishis. And I wouldn't say sadhus here, rishi is the right word. But I'm not talking about that, although you're all right. The meaning that I discovered in course of that lecture by Professor Shuniti Pathok is this literal meaning of ashram as a place where everyone labors. Ashram, if shram, it would be in a lot of Indian languages, it would mean what? Labor, right? Work. Shram. Shramdan. We all talk about Shramdan today. So putting in your physical labor, manual labor, bodily labor. And stands for universal or pan. So ashram is a place where everyone works. So do you now see the connection with the way in which 10th of March is commemorated as Gandhi Punnaho? Do you see the connection?
Yes, Didi.
Yeah. So that's the idea. You see, in an ashram, there is no division in labor. Yes, people work for us. People who make it possible for us to take classes at the department, or say in my case, Bhasha Bhavan, That is made possible by the fact that there are people who clean up the place for me. So if I had to come in every day and clean the classroom and then start taking classes, I would be nowhere. I would not be able to use my time to do what I was being, shall we say, I had been appointed to do. So my work is being eased, and shall we say, facilitated by people who are taking care of the bodily labor aspect. So that is the kind of respect that Vishwabharati and Shantiniketan instills in us for physical labor. It's not a place only for esoteric, idealistic studies where you forget where your food comes from. Quite the contrary. That's not Tagore. Tagore was very much a pragmatist. That is why he is going to send his son to who would have been good at anything. That is the reason why he sent his son to Illinois to learn to do his higher studies in the technology of agriculture, because agriculture is important for to run an ashram. Other aspects of the cohabitation has to be looked into. So Shilpo Shodon, as you know, looks into the making of things in an aesthetic way that are supposed to be used, and money is supposed to very intelligently. This is all about the current modern ideas of self-generation of funds. That is what Tagore would have had in mind. So everything that is needed, all the things, all the items or amenities and provisions that people who live as part of the ashram need should be produced from within the ashram, and whatever is surplus will then be sold, and the money that is earned from it will then be invested back into the ashram. Do you understand this principle? It makes perfect sense. Of course, it gets more complicated when ashram is no longer a small community but gets much larger. But we are going back to the basics of economics, right? Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah. So everyone
Yes,
is a
Didi.
cog in the wheel. Yeah. So everyone is a cog in the wheel. You see, the Kala Bhavan or the arts department would be looking into art from an aesthetic point of view, but would also have constant truck with Shilpo Shodon. Shilpo, as you know, is a word that means both technology and art. That's a very interesting overlap in the word Shilpo. So they would be making bags, and they would be making curtains. They would be making shall we say, upholstery. They would be making so many different things of daily use. You need a bag to go to school. I need a bag to take my books to the department. So you see, it's all about integration of labor, and so nobody is dispensable. Everyone has a contribution which needs to be respected. This is the ashram, and this is what is celebrated as part of Gandhi Punnaho. So I hope you understand what I've been getting at. And then there's this little bit about what I have already explained to you, Tagore's differences with Gandhi on how the non-cooperation movement might be run. And let me now quickly move on to the next page. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, Didi.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you. This date as well. This is the day on which Gandhi and Tagore would, you see, they had been in correspondence for a long time. And it was in 1915 that the Phoenix School students would come and stay. but it would take a little bit of a time for Tagore and Gandhi to actually physically meet. So that's the historic conference here. Note the date, 6 September 1921 at Vichitra Bhavan. So the Vichitra that we know is the house that today houses the museum as part of the Uttarayan complex, would have had its counterpart at Jorashako, which is the ancestral house. And then 1916 onwards, as you know, this is what are the dates for the First World War? Can you tell me?
Ma'am, 1861.
From 1914 to 18.
That's right, 1914 to 18. 1861 was Tagore's year of birth. So, and the Second World War?
1939 to 1945.
That's right. So Tagore died in 1941. So I think it's important because he knew that the Second World War was coming. If you ever look at his writings, his lectures between the two wars, he knew that it was not going to stop at the First World War. Given all the damages it had done, more damages, more ravages, more destruction was on its way. And that's why he's going to write that very, very strident critique of Western statism in the crisis in civilization, Shobhota Shankuts, the Sankat in Savyata, if I were to, pronounce that for the benefit of those who don't follow Bangla. So 1916 is very much wartime. And if you were to look at his English writings, there's a lot that he says there to lament what was happening around the world. Please remember, particularly those from history, that, it's not just about mourning something that was happening elsewhere, a long way off. A lot of Indian soldiers, hundreds and thousands of Indian soldiers who served the British Army then, were actually conscripted and sent off to war. Nazrul Islam, the great Bengali poet and song maker, composer, and writer, would actually himself be recruited. He would go and serve in Mesopotamia, and hundreds and thousands of British Indian soldiers actually lost their lives, laid down their lives for the British cause in the First World War. So India paid a human price. Besides the economic cost, there was a human price that India paid for the First World War, for the Allied powers in the First World War, and then again in the Second World War. The 1942 famine in Bengal would not have happened had it not been for the Second World War, had it not been for the fact that Churchill was, Winston Churchill, the then British Prime Minister, was, shall we say, plumbing India's food grain reserves in order to feed the British Army. So India paid a huge price, not just in terms of actual soldiers losing their lives, but the shall we say, the collateral damage for the civilian population, again, hundreds of thousands of people who died in the Bengal famine, one of the worst famines. Today, pictures are coming out, very graphic pictures of the extent of suffering, and I have heard about that from my grandmother, or people who would have seen, people, going begging for rice, for food, and so on. So tremendous levels of dehumanization suffered by British India as a result of these wars. So you see, Tagore is not just, this is not cosmetic critique of war and politics. No, I mean, he was fighting on behalf of a population of a colonized people who had no choice, who were not given a choice to abstain from war. They were not asked whether this was not India's war, but India was nevertheless made to contribute towards that war. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, Didi.
So the parallelly poetry and drama was making great strides. There is the poems of Purobi, which were a little different, and lovely names there. You see, Purobi is of the east. Purav, Purva, Purav. So Palatoka, which means fugitive, a fugitive woman or fugitive feminine entity. Palataka. Then Muktodhara is a very, very seminal play. Note the dates also. It's about the whole idea of if you like, the management of natural resources. It should I mean, today we are a lot of countries, if a lot of perhaps regions in India too are unfortunately paying water taxes for water. And if corporatization happens, then there'll be more of us paying taxes for water. So on the one hand, just as water should not be wasted, I think Muktodhara is about making sure that natural resources are kind of belong to everybody, and that there is no discrimination or monopolization of natural resources. The sky should belong to everybody. Oxygen should be available to everybody. Water should be available to everybody. Land should be available to everybody. It should feed everyone. So that kind of that very, very progressive statement, not just in ecological balance, but in kind of raising a rallying cry to ensure that people in power don't, shall we say, exclude the common people from natural resources. That is the subject matter of Muktodhara. Muktodhara, as you can understand, free flow. So water should flow freely. And the oppressive king there, who is finally, as it were, vanquished by the will of the people, was trying to, shall we say, keep water from being supplied to people from the neighboring kingdom. So that is what this play is about. So again, the point I was making, Tagore's plays are very, very symbolic, but that doesn't make them unrealistic. They are not plays that concern themselves with esoteric subjects that have no kind of touch with ground realities, with the grassroots life and struggles of people, on the ground. That's not it at all. I think that what is so remarkable about Tagore is that he can combine his concerns with the ordinary. I don't say that in pejorative terms at all. I mean, I'd say that with common man, common woman like you and me, and shall we say the highest of philosophical concerns. He's trying to combine these two in his art. So his art is also activism. Note the names here: Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay, who's actually one of the best known Bengali writers, if you consider translation into Hindi, because a lot of his works have been cinematized and have been translated and read by people who don't read Bangla. Nazrul Islam is again, I think, one of the most modern, shall we say, musical minds to have come out of Bengal and India in that period, and so on. And then there will be this important series of lectures, which you also can read up. One of them, which we shall actually read next semester at the University of Calcutta in 1923. Fresh slew of names here: Kalidas Nag, Nandalal Bose. Kalidas Nag was a philosopher, and he would be instrumental in starting the Darshan Shodon, which would for a very long time in those days be a premier institute for advanced studies. So you see, Vishwabharati hosted a center for advanced studies here, and that is all because of the efforts of the philosophers who had joined the institution at that stage. Kalidas Nag would also accompany him on a lot of his trips to the Far East. Elmhurst I've mentioned. Kiti Mohan Sen was not just a great scholar, Sanskrit scholar, but also the grandfather of the Nobel laureate Amartya Sen. Right? Did you get that?
Yes, Didi.
Yeah. So he would go to China, and then again, there are lots of histories around how, again, his relationship with the Chinese government was a little blow hot, blow cold one. There are people who welcomed him, but whenever he complained about imperialist designs harbored by either Japan or China, they would not really take very kindly to it. But imagine, I mean, today we talk about opening centers. So I was again today listening to a talk as part of a Tagore Center at Berkeley. So conversely, there, you know, I think Vishwabharati is the only place as that early on that not only had Hindi Bhavan but also a center for Indo-Tibetan studies, a center for Chinese studies. So China Bhavan, a center for Japanese studies. I mean, unheard of things. Now, schools of languages across the country at, say, Jawaharlal Nehru University and others have such centers for, Far Eastern learning and so on. So this is now nothing new. But all those years back, Vishwabharati has had these centers for specialist studies all along. So the friendship between Vishwabharati and Chinese scholars and poets is one of long standing. And then he again went to Japan, as you can see. Then this is a very important trip to Peru and Argentina, to the South America. And note also the date of the publication of Rokto Korobi, his most political play, which talks about how, as I've said in the case of Muktodhara, it's about making the monarch or powers that be responsible for the well-being of the entire population rather than making them subservient to a mercenary exercise that feeds only some people. So Rokto Korobi is about a rebellion led by a girl called Nandini against the oppression of by this very, very greedy king, Mokur Raj, and the oppression actually that he had been perpetrating for a long time over people who were forced to go into the mines and plumb out, shall we say, gems and mineral resources for him, and of course they were left to languish in abject poverty. So the king was getting richer and richer, but this this wealth was not being shared with the people. And I think the idea in Rokto Korobi is that if you keep people behind, if you don't take people along on the route to progress, on the march to progress, then inevitably the people are going to pull you back. So you have to take everyone along in the march towards freedom and progress and economic prosperity. It doesn't suffice to be rich alone. You have to make sure that there is equitable distribution of wealth. Mind you, he is not talking in the same terms as, say, the Soviet socialists or Soviet communists did. He's not talking about state ownership of property. He didn't go that far. He had a lot of admiration for Russia, but cooperative farming and things like that. But he was not advocating public ownership of wealth. He was thinking in terms of governors and rulers who are conscientious enough to make sure that wealth was equitably distributed, so among their people. So he thought that it was possible to arrive at a balance between, shall we say, private ownership and shall we say equitable ownership. So that is what Rock the Corby is about. And what is so remarkable about the play is that here the revolutionary, the leader, the visionary is a woman, is a girl. She's so brave that she can confront Makur Raj and never quite, and Makur Raj, and he cannot, if you like, she does not brook any fear of oppression for him, and he finally has to give in to her. It's tragic, but she has to finally give in to her. Has anyone here watched Hirok Raja Deshe by Satyajit Ray? So I have a feeling that Satyajit Ray, in principle, was kind of developing the theme of Rock the Corby. To at the end of Hirok Raja Deshi, Hirok Raja himself, now brainwashed, comes to pull at the statue, the giant statue of his. He helps pull it down. So it's the Raja who pulls down his own statue there. Likewise, in Rock the Corby, Makur Raj takes to the streets and marches alongside Nandini and other subjects of his to bring himself down. So I think that's the biggest, I think the most interesting part of the Tagorean vision of rebellion. Rebellion is not about us and them. It's not meant to destroy anybody. Whatever is evil, or in the political sense, in the economic sense, whatever is anti-people, is something that even those in power should reject. And so they join hands with people, the masses, to shall we say, replace everything that is is not so good, is not so shall we say humanitarian, with new principles, new ideas of unity and universal prosperity and so on. Note also Probashi. This is where it was published. Then he would go to Argentina, which proved to be a seminal visit because this is where he was going to stay at Victoria Ocampo's house, and Victoria Ocampo would have a profound impact on Tagore's, shall we say, how do you call that? I mean, Tagore's entry into the scene of art. So she would be instrumental in hosting Tagore exhibition, Tagore painting exhibition of Tagore's paintings in Paris. So I think it was a very, very important trip there. Just a moment, let me project the final page, as in the final page of.
Didi,
Yeah, you have a class.
no, who was the publisher of Provachi?
The publisher of Probashi are not, as of now, very, very clear. So Shobuj Patra was, as you know, Pramotha Chaudhuri. Ramanando published Modern Review. I was, just a moment. I don't, just a moment, I'll Probashi. Yeah, this, okay, right. Ramanando Chatterjee ran two papers. You see, one in English and one is in Bangla. Sorry, I'd forgotten that. Thank you for asking that question. So the English one was Modern Review, and the one in Bangla is Probashi. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Right. So Okay, so can you all see that again?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So that's where we please note the spelling of the name Victoria Ocampo as well. He stayed there at Buenos Aires. He would he would inscribe Puravi, of course, to her, and he would call her Bijoya. And notice how stupendous number of countries he happened to visit on this particular trip. He went to Greece, and he would come back in 1926, end of 1926, and then he would again go to Java in Indonesia. If I have time tomorrow, and as I believe I shall, I might show you, as I said, a few pictures. Notice the names of the people who accompanied him. Sudhiti Kumar Chatterjee was a scholar of Bengali literature and a historian of Bengali language and literature. Suren Kaur, architect and artist. Dhiren Krishna Dev Verma was the Maharaja of Tripura, with whom Tagore had a long association. And one of the things that makes anyone from Tripura here? No. Anyway, so the fact that Shantiniketan has a long history of cultural exchanges with Tripura could be because of the friendship between the Tagore family and the Dev Krishna Dhirendra and the Dev Burma family, royal family. And then, as you know, whenever he went somewhere, he would be writing travelogues, which are not just touristy accounts of or diaries of where he went, but more, shall we say, cultural, ethnographic discourses on the things that he could make out about those cultures and their histories and their way of life and their economic and political reality from in course of the visits. So another travelogue is Java Yatri Potro, Java Jatri Potro. All these have been translated into English. In fact, a couple of, most of them are in circulation from the Bishwabharati press. That is, so you, if you wish, you can always buy a copy and you can read more about it. Um, uh, Note the name of this particular lecture, The Philosophy of Leisure. You know, today, and I'm a great votary of that, today we talk about slow living. I don't know if you're aware of this. Slow teaching, slow living, slow as a way of life, which is supposed to be an act of resistance against uh, the tearing hurry that neoliberal, a globalized life across all countries everywhere had forced us into. Have forced us into. In fact, COVID has actually, thanks to COVID, we are back somewhat into slow living, slow life, and I really believe in the virtues and in the benefits of that. You end up achieving more if you don't run from one pursuit to another in search of this elusive success. Having said that, slow doesn't mean idle. Do you see the difference? Tagore was never idle. I mean, it's phenomenal how much he, if you just look at his corpus, you know that he never quite rested. He was always doing something or the other. So being slow does not mean, slowing down does not mean being idle. uh, Being living in the country doesn't mean you're not creative. It's just that you follow a more organic principle of creativity. Quickly, Joga Jog and Shesher Kovita is a very interesting hybrid kind of poetic novel. Shesher Kovita, Joga Jog, a very important social novel about marriage, about relationship between the sexes, about compatibility, and again about the new age woman, and her assertiveness in terms of how she chooses to live. Although all Tagore novels are ultimately conciliatory, he believes uh, in uh, in, shall we say, reconciliation. So he doesn't believe in disruption. So ultimately, he makes sure that everyone is reconciled. So Joga Jog, as you know, connections or relationships is the word Joga Jog. Shesher Kobita, the last poem, which is also about reconciliation and interesting encounters and man-woman relations and so on. Plays Sheshrokha and Tapoti, poems Mohua, musical drama Ritu Rongo, which would have been performed here at Shantiniketan. So a very rich basket of literary artistic productions hail from this period. 1926 underlined this Indian Philosophical Congress, where he would talk about the Bauls, who are so central to Shantiniketan culture. I mean, if you travel to Shantiniketan from Calcutta, for instance, on Shantiniketan Express, then one of the things you would want to experience would be bauls or wandering singers and musicians getting onto the train compartments and entertaining you. So traveling musicians, and how Lalon Phokir from East Bengal, or what is today Bangladesh, how profoundly his philosophy of syncretism and the unity of all religions how profoundly influenced Tagorean philosophy of syncretism and unity of all faiths. Tagore never fought shy of, never got tired of emphasizing the contribution of Lalon Phokir, and he would many of Tagore's Baul songs, as it were, are modeled on Lalon Phokir's songs and other Baul songs he had heard as a child. So I think I will stop here. There's Religion of Man, which I'll briefly talk about. So the first 5 minutes tomorrow, I will finish the text. Are you all there?
Yes, Didi.
Okay.
Yes, Didi.
See that many have
Yes, ma'am.
left. Yeah. So I think since it's 10:30, I will stop here. And we meet finally tomorrow to finish the text, and maybe in the remaining time, look at a few slides and so on. Okay?
Okay, Didi.
Okay, Didi.
Okay. Thank you for your attention. Later. Yeah.